The USA is our greatest hope for freedom, and I'm going to explain why I've arrived at this position and why it is that everybody is saying that the US is coming to an end, etc. There is a strong force that doesn't want freedom, and if you can't see that, you're not looking. We've just experienced that very openly with the most ridiculous experience that has passed humanity in decades, if not longer. In the USA, there are still millions of men who have strong opinions about freedom, who want to maintain the freedom that has been hard won by their ancestors. Now, that spirit doesn't exist in most Western European countries, Australia. That same spirit is not there, and the willingness to fight for it is not there. The religious side of the United States means that a lot of people are not going to turn easily, and they're not going to shift their values away from the freedom that has been hard won. Before people started arriving to the United States and had this land with low taxes, no tax, where tax was illegal, and great, people flourished and developed these huge civilization, cities, organization, structures, infrastructure that is here in the United States. Before that, people like me who were Smiths in Europe were ineligible to own land. And so it's the entrepreneurship and the lack of taxation in the United States that created a level of freedom and prosperity that has given birth to that opportunity all around the world. And so it's bringing that down that is the primary challenge and responsibility for those who would like to return to a feudal system and don't want this freedom that has been hard won and that we've been enjoying around the world for decades and centuries now. They don't want that to continue. And so bringing down the US dollar, bringing down the US people, shaming the US, ending that cultural dominance where the world looks up to the freedom that has been created in the US and they want that for their own country, that is what is under attack. And so in the West, there's no other force that has the possibility to maintain this freedom. In the East, that's not really the goal. And so there are opportunities to live on the fringe and, building in places like Vanuatu and Montenegro and Latin America, moving to Mexico, etc. You can get away from some of the madness, and there's definitely a lot of madness that's happening in the United States. And it's happening all in the Western world. All the confusion around gender and a lot of the worst of the things that happened in the last few years were experienced in the West, right? It was really targeted at a certain population of the world more closely. And so some places in Mexico, etc., it was fine. People were able to do whatever they wanted because that wasn't really the target of the event. The event was about bringing down the Western world and testing the resilience and what people in the Western world would stand for, and shifting people to being more online. And I'm sure a lot of stuff that I don't even fully understand. But getting to the fringe on your own or with a small group of people like the Mennonites and like the Amish, and I really like how a lot of the United States was started, was people who decided they wanted more freedom and they just wanted to get away from whatever it is that is creating this decrease in freedom and enslavement. That's really it's been happening for a long time, this sort of challenge. And so you can move to the fringes like I have been and setting up, because I can't control national politics. I can't control the collective consciousness of culture of millions of men, and therefore we have to set up some alternatives. But at the same time, the only hope at the moment is that this institution of the United States continues to have power and the ability to defend itself, and has a strong say in the way that the world works. If that stops, it's concerning. Maybe Bitcoin offers another path where there's a kind of money that allows for continuation of some of the values that we're talking about here. Because the other type of money that we're on the verge of bringing in is that techno-feudalism, the thing where you can't use money for what you want it to be used for, where your account can be wiped. That's the other possibility that exists now with the central bank digital currencies, which are being tested and being rolled out. So we're at this turning point, and it seems as though the men who are most likely to stand up and say, no chance, we're not going into this other future, the majority of them with the strongest standards and the ability to do something about it are in the United States. And so that is why I see the United States as the center of this. There's also a lot of men here who really value achievement, the sporting culture, the college culture. They value success, they value achievement, they have high energy, and that is also something that you don't see. I've met a lot of men from all around the world. I've worked with coaches and athletes from everywhere in the Western world, and there's something different about the American culture. And I didn't fully understand that growing up. You sort of always think Americans are, obsessed with themselves, and they always think their country's the best. But it actually is. There's just more positivity. There's more energy to be better and to achieve. That achievement and fulfillment from a material side and from a philosophical, religious side is stronger here than anywhere else. And so, to me, that's still the greatest hope that we have for maintaining some powerful, positive institutions. The other way to look at this stuff is from the side of infrastructure and things actually working. You can go and set up in Mexico, Vanuatu, Montenegro, but it's not the same. It's not easy to get things done really well. Things get done really well in the Western world. And so turning your back on that, moving away from that, has a huge cost in terms of productivity, in terms of the quality of dwellings and infrastructure and electricity and plumbing and everything. It has been done well in the West for a long time, and the ability to continue to do that well is here. It's not there in other places. You can import tradesmen and you can do things, but it's just already done well here, the roads and everything. It's been such a big project to build such a big, beautiful country, and that exists in other countries as well, but the same people don't exist. What the other big thing that is here that is not in some other places is farming ability. So the ability to produce its own food and all the other resources that go with it, but particularly food. It's a fertile country, and so the ability to produce food is something that is very important to have in a country. You might look at some other up-and-coming nations and you think, well, yeah, they've got good governance or it's safer, but if they can't produce their own food, then it's not a good place to be. You're completely dependent on politics because you can be cut off completely. And so the transition to live in the least hospitable places seems to be a strong trend around the world, to live in coastal areas, sandy soils, things like that, rather than living on the rich, fertile soils. But at least, this country has the ability to feed itself, and a lot of other countries do not have that ability. Some of these new countries that are being sort of set up and people are shuffling towards don't have the ability to feed themselves. And so this is how I'm looking at the situation at the moment. This is why I feel as though the United States is extremely important. It's not to say that there aren't a lot of problems here, drug problems, social problems. It's all being engineered, socially engineered into this culture, the same as everywhere else, but there is a strong resistance to it, and that resistance has power. So that's the way I see it. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, perspectives. What am I missing? What would you add?